Hey, brothers and sisters. Welcome to our Wednesday Ephphatha Bible study for Wednesday, the 20th of January. A very important day. I want to say that I appreciate you taking time to be with us on this day. Well, today, it's a beautiful day in Mountain City. It's a little bit warmer today. We still got some snow on the ground, though. I don't know if it's hanging on for another one or not, but still, it's a beautiful day. I want to share a mug with you. This is from the Battleship North Carolina. They're in Wilmington. The Gail and the girls and I went there 10 years ago. No, probably more. No, it's more than that. 15 years ago. Wow, time flies. Anyway, we went there on one of our winter trips, one of our winter getaways, and toured the battleship. It was really cool. And we went on over to the beach, and I have my mug is filled with shell pieces I picked up off the beach there. Good reminders of a really good trip. It was really cool walking around the battleship, and we got to climb up inside one of the turrets and look through the sighting scope and things like that. So it was a neat trip, and this is a good reminder of a really good time. So I appreciate that. All right. Well, today we are still in Exodus chapter 21, and we're going to be looking at some of the further commandments that God has given. And I'll be honest, brothers and sisters, this section is kind of troubling. We're getting into some more of the details. We kind of ended last week with some of the details of how to treat slaves and things like that. And here's some more of that. And it is kind of troubling to hear just to hear that. And I want to keep in mind that even though it may sound like it, I do not believe that God is extending his approval to the practice of slavery. In actuality, the commandments here are putting limits on the powers of those who own slaves, and that in itself is kind of countercultural. So I think we want to focus on that and realize that God was dealing with an already existent situation and is in a process of changing that or moderating that a little bit. Linda Miller says, "Hey, so hello, Linda. How are you? I can't see the emoticon. I'm in your glasses. Oh dear. So hey, glad you're with us today, Linda. All right, so we are in Exodus 21, chapter 12. No. Exodus 21, verse 12. All right. Whoever strikes a person mortally shall be put to death. If it was not premeditated, but came about by an act of God, then I will appoint for you a place to which the killer may flee. But if someone willfully attacks and kills another by treachery, you shall take the killer from my altar for execution." So if somebody accidentally kills somebody else, God is going to establish a place where they can go. But if it is premeditated, then that person shall be put to death himself. The killer shall be put to death. Whoever strikes father or mother shall be put to death. So that's a rather harsh penalty, but I can understand it. Whoever kidnaps a person, whether that person has been sold or is still held in possession, shall be put to death. Wow. Okay. Let's see. Whoever curses father or mother, so whoever who strikes father or mother, and whoever curses father and mother shall be put to death. And we kind of touched on the idea of father and mother in the original part of the commandments. Honor your father and mother. They stand as representative, not just for your parents, but for the wider community as well. That we are part of a community and responsible to a community. And so rebelling against that, harming that community, and it's in the person of your father and mother, is a really serious thing. Okay. 18. When individuals quarrel and one strikes the other with a stone or fist, so that the injured party, though not dead, is confined to bed, but recovers and walks around outside with the help of a staff, then the assailant shall be free of liability except to pay for the loss of time, and to arrange for a full recovery. So that's a really specific kind of nuance to this law. I mean, if two people get in a fight and one person injures another person, so they're not killed, but they have to take to bed for a while, then the person the assailant has to pay for the loss of time and pay for the care of the injured party. Okay, 20. When a slave owner strikes a male or female slave with a rod, and the slave dies immediately, the owner shall be punished. But if the slave survives for a day or two, there is no punishment, for the slave is the owner's property. Yeah. So if they kill them outright, then there is punishment. But if they linger for a while, then that's just the way it goes. I don't like that, but thankfully we're under the new covenant, not this old covenant. I'm thankful that we've grown in that sense, at least. When people who are fighting injure a pregnant woman, so that there is a miscarriage, yet no further harm follows, the one responsible shall be fined what the woman's husband demands, paying as much as the judges determine. So the husband can demand recompense, and the judge can kind of intervene in that. But the woman doesn't have a say in it from this way it's written. And again, in the ancient world, women didn't really have any rights or anything. That's another way I'm glad that we've grown and become better. Okay. If any harm follows, then you shall give life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burn for burn, wound for wound, and stripe for stripe. Okay, I do have to confess a little bit that there is a certain barbaric appeal to that, to those who would purposefully cause harm to another. There would be a certain justice, I would think, to injuring the assailant in the same way that they hurt the other. It might teach them something. But again, that's something that I have to repent of and grow out of, because Jesus tells us to love our enemies. So although I can understand the appeal of that, I think we have to grow beyond it. I really do. That is not to say that we as Christians should not hold guilty parties responsible. That's something very different. There is a difference from like me getting payback on somebody. And it's different if it's like through the legal system or through the mechanisms that we've set up to provide accountability. So if someone breaks the law, then they should be held accountable. And I think we as Christians, if we break the law, we should fess up to it and accept the consequences of our actions. And I think that's how we would act as Christians in the legal system. So I can understand the appeal of wanting to get payback, and yes, I do love the action adventure movies where the good guy solves the problems by fighting or getting rid of the bad guy. So there are areas I need to grow in. I need to be better in lots of ways. So I'll confess that to you. And looking forward to the James Bond movie coming out. Just saying. Anyway, all right, 26. When a slave owner strikes the eye of a male or female slave, destroying it, the owner shall let the slave go, a free person, to compensate for the eye. If the owner knocks out a tooth of a male or female slave, the slave shall be let go, a free person, to compensate for the tooth. Now, this is interesting, too, that if you can beat them with a stick, and if they linger for a few days and die, then that's no big deal. But if you put out an eye or knock out a tooth, which if you're beating with the stick would seem to be kind of possible, they're let go, a free person. So this does, I think, present a rather remarkable change or remarkable restraint on the power of the slave owners, which before this was just completely unrestrained, and restraining the power of the rich and the powerful has always been a problem for societies. Rich and powerful folks don't bear restraints well. And so part of our journey in Christ is to learn how to restrain ourselves, like those impulses I just confessed to earlier, and learn how to be Christ-like as we live our lives. It's a challenge. Okay. 28. When an ox gores a man or woman to death, the ox shall be stoned, and its flesh shall not be eaten, but the owner of the ox shall not be liable. If the ox has been accustomed to gore in the past, and the owner has been warned, but has not restrained it, and it kills a man or woman, the ox shall be stoned, and its owner shall also be put to death. If a ransom is imposed on the owner, then the owner shall pay whatever is imposed for the redemption of the victim's life. If it gores a boy or a girl, the owner shall be dealt with according to the same rule. If the ox gores a male or female slave, the owner shall pay the slave owner 30 shekels of silver, and the ox shall be stoned. Okay. Now let me skip down to 35 because goes back to talking about oxen. If someone hurts the ox of another so that it dies, they shall sell the live ox and divide the price of it. And the dead animal they shall also divide. You can eat it. But if it was known that the ox was accustomed to gore in the past, and its owner has not restrained it, then the owner shall restore ox for ox, but keep the dead animal. So I think this is really interesting because there is a very clear sense of if something bad happens, like if your ox does something bad, you bear some responsibility for it. I mean, you can't completely control it, but you do bear some responsibility. You don't just say, "Oh well." But if you know that there is a danger, if you know that this ox is misbehaved in the past, if you're aware of it, then the penalty jumps dramatically. I mean, the ox owner can be put to death or charged huge fines. So there is in here in the commandments of God, there is an accountability, but yet a provision for those honest mistakes of life. I mean, tragic situations do happen. But if there is negligence or willful ignorance or just not caring, then there are some much greater responsibility, greater penalties and things like that. I think that's really interesting that God, even here, God is taking into account the situations, and to an extent, I would say God is looking at the intentions of our hearts, and that is impacting how God deals with us. That if we should have known better, then we're held accountable for that. We've got to take responsibility for our actions. Linda writes, "That's a hard lesson. Thank God for the new covenant brought by Jesus." Amen to that, Linda. Absolutely. This is hard stuff, but the world was a harder place then, and God is trying to shape a stiff-necked, stubborn people. So it's just hard to imagine. Okay, and the bit we skipped was backing up in verse 33. If someone leaves a pit open or digs a pit and does not cover it, and an ox or donkey falls into it, then the owner of the pit shall make restitution, giving money to its owner, but keeping the dead animal. So again, there is the idea that we're responsible for our actions. We should use the brains God gave us and look ahead and see what we can rightly, not rightly assume, that we could possibly imagine things could happen. If you dig a large hole, you can easily imagine someone might fall into it. They might not be paying attention, or the ox or donkey can wander into it and fall into it and get hurt. So you have to take care. You have to do what you can to prevent that situation. So it's really interesting here that even in these early days of the covenant, that God is taking into account different situations, different intentions, things that we should know, things that we should do, and accommodating that, or dealing with that. I think that's really interesting. Okay, going on into chapter 22, and it's kind of more of the same. These are very specific instances. Let's just go on here. When someone steals an ox or a sheep and slaughters it or sells it, the thief shall pay 5 oxen for an ox and 4 sheep for a sheep. The thief shall make restitution, but if unable to do so, the thief shall be sold for the theft, paid for the theft. I think that's fair. But anyway, when the animal, whether ox or donkey or sheep, is found alive in the thief's possession, the thief shall pay double. If a thief is found breaking in and is beaten to death, no blood guilt is incurred. But if it happens after sunrise, blood guilt is incurred. That's really interesting. After sunrise, that makes a. I wonder if that turns it into the provision for fighting that we read back in chapter 21 just a few minutes ago. But it's also interesting that God is not assuming that His people are little angels, not a bunch of choir boys and choir girls. God is dealing with real people in real situations, thievery, fighting, animals doing harm, animals being animals, negligence, ignorance, maliciousness. God is dealing with all of these things and setting up pretty clear rules about how to deal with that. So from the get-go, God has known that we people aren't perfect, that we need guidance. And like Linda, like you said a few minutes ago, thank God for the new covenant. It is more challenging in all ways. I'll sort of say in many ways, but in all ways it's more challenging. But I thank God that it is ultimately more merciful and more loving. So, wow, this is tough stuff. All right. Verse 5. When someone causes a field or a vineyard to be grazed over, or lets livestock loose to graze in someone else's field, restitution shall be made from the best of the owner's field or vineyard. So if you let your animals eat your neighbor's orchard crop, then the hurt party gets the best, not just any old, but the best from your orchard. I think that's pretty fair. When fire breaks out and catches in thorns, so that the stacked grain or standing grain in the field is consumed, the one who started the fire shall make full restitution. So yeah, people, all of this is about taking responsibility, about living in community and taking responsibility. There have always been those who didn't want to play by the rules or didn't think the rules applied to them. And God is consistently sending the message that we are all in this together, and we all have to live together and live rightly with each other. Okay. 7. When someone delivers to a neighbor money or goods for safekeeping, and they are stolen from the neighbor's house, the thief, if caught, shall pay double. If the thief is not caught, the owner of the house shall be brought before God to determine whether or not the owner had laid hand on the neighbor's goods. I don't know really what that means, I imagine they would brought to the tent of meeting, and the priest would pray for a sign from God as to what had happened. I don't know the nuts and bolts of that, um, but they went to the temple and prayed for God to reveal the truth, so the guilty party could be punished. In any case of a disputed ownership involving ox, donkey, sheep, clothing, or any other loss, of which one party says, "This is mine," the case of both parties shall come before God, and the one whom God condemns shall pay double to the other. So they go to God and let God settle it. When someone delivers to another a donkey, ox, sheep, or any other animal for safekeeping, and it dies or is injured or is carried off without anyone seeing it, an oath before the Lord shall decide between the two of them that the one has not laid hands on the property of the other. The owner shall accept the oath, and no restitution shall be made. But if it was stolen, restitution shall be made to its owner. If it was mangled by beasts, let it be brought as evidence. Restitution shall not be made for the mangled remains. So, even in the midst of this being responsible for your actions, God is also making provision that sometimes bad things just happen. That if you entrust your prize-winning donkey to your neighbor and lions eat it, and assuming if the owner did everything he in his power to care for that donkey like his own donkeys, then that's just a bad thing that happened. So God is allowing the reality of mistakes and errors and tragedies to be a part of His law from the beginning. Being aware that we are certainly imperfect people, and we live in an imperfect world. Okay. 22:14. When someone borrows an animal from another, and it is injured or dies, the owner not being present, full restitution shall be made. If the owner was present, there shall be no restitution. If it was hired, only the hiring fee is due. When a man seduces a virgin who is not engaged to be married and lies with her, he shall give the bride price for her and make her his wife. But if her father refuses to give her to him, he shall pay an amount equal to the bride price for virgins. So again, the woman or the girl is not having a voice in this situation, something that we today would recognize as wrong, but here in the ancient world, that was normal, that was expected. And so there is God is putting consequences on the guy, and if the father is kind and listens to the girl, and she doesn't want to go, then the miscreant, the creep, still has to pay for her. You shall not permit a female sorcerer to live. Okay. Whoever lies with an animal shall be put to death. Okay. Whoever sacrifices to any god other than the Lord alone shall be voted to destruction. That was made clear early on. You shall not worship anyone or anything else besides God. You shall not wrong or oppress a resident alien, for you were aliens in the land of Egypt. We've got to take care of aliens and those who are not resident here. That should ring some bells. Immigrants, things like that. You shall not abuse any widow or orphan. If you do abuse them, when they cry out to me, I will surely heed their cry. My wrath will burn, and I will kill you with a sword, and your wives shall become widows, and your children orphans. Wow. Okay. This is a little bit unusual in that God is promising His revenge, His retribution on those who abuse widows and orphans. And this is an ongoing theme through both Testaments. God has always and will always have a soft spot, a special care for the defenseless, for the poor, for the marginalized, for the downtrodden, for the silenced. God always has a special spot for the underdog, and we as God's people are required to do the same. So this is if you take advantage of these defenseless ones, then it's going to go especially hard on you. God's wrath shall burn against you. That's not a place you want to be. Wow. Okay. All right. 25. If you lend money to my people, to the poor among you, you shall not deal with them as creditor. You shall not exact interest from them. If you take your neighbor's cloak and pawn, you shall restore it before the sun goes down. For it may be your neighbor's only clothing to use as cover. In what else shall that person sleep? And if your neighbor cries out to me, I will listen, for I am compassionate. You shall not revile God or curse a leader of your people. Why would you revile God? Well, if you're one of the rich and powerful who's accustomed to getting your own way, I can see where a lot of folks will get upset by these rules that are telling them what they can and can't do. The nerve. So remember, God always has a special care and concern for the powerless, the disadvantaged, the disenfranchised. You shall not delay or make offerings from the fullness of your harvest and from the outflow of your presses. So when you need to give thanks offerings, don't delay. Don't delay about it. The firstborn of your sons you shall give to me. You shall do the same with your oxen, with your sheep. For 7 days it shall remain with its mother. On the 8th day you shall give it to me. This has come up in the past couple of Sundays. Oh, hi, Gail. Glad you're with us. Last Sunday, I talked about Samuel serving in the temple. Well, he was the firstborn, and his mother, instead of paying the ransom or the fee in order to redeem him, to keep him for herself, she gave him to the temple. That was kind of the bargain she made with God. And we talked about during Christmas season about Joseph and Mary taking Jesus to the temple to redeem him because he was the firstborn, and so they paid the price for the poor people to pay, so they were able to take Jesus back home with them. So God has claimed the firstborn of says of the sons, but I think that they interpret it as all of the thing, all the kids. You shall do the same with your oxen and with your sheep. For 7 days it shall remain with its mother. On the 8th day you shall give it to me. You shall be a people consecrated to me. Therefore you shall not eat meat that is mangled by the beasts in the field. You shall throw it to the dogs. I don't understand why that's important, but God said to do it that way, so okay, we'll do it that way. Yeah. So these are some very specific rules that God has laid out. Again, we're in the Old Testament. This is the Old Covenant. We're not obliged to obey the Old Covenant, but we do use it to learn from. We are obliged to obey. We are beholden to the New Covenant that Jesus laid out, and that's love your God and love your neighbor. And it's a lot more all-encompassing than this is. But this is interesting, and we're going to keep on keeping on because there are more explicit commandments, rules that we need to talk about. And as time goes on, the rabbis take these rules and apply them to different situations. And so there is this, by Jesus' time, there's this large body of interpretation and application of these rules, these commandments. And that's what part of what the Pharisees did was study and know the commandments, the laws, and the interpretation, and how to apply those in different situations. So we'll stop here, and we'll pick up in chapter 23 next week. Hope you're finding this interesting. It's interesting. It's a little challenging since we're not directly beholden to it anymore. However, it is still something that we can learn from, and it's interesting to see how God is dealing with the ancient peoples and how that how that changes over time, how it changes and doesn't change over time. Well, I hope you guys have a blessed week. Stay warm and stay safe. First Church is not having an in-person service this week. As per our protocol, we are in the second week of a 2-week shutdown because of a COVID case. So we'll be online at the usual time in the usual places on Sunday. We're going to be looking at the story of Jonah, one of my favorite stories in the Bible. So that'll be something interesting. But anyway, I hope you guys have a blessed week. You guys stay safe, stay warm, and we will talk to you later on. God bless.